Okay, so we are recording now. So what I want to do is start off with the dashboard and show you a couple of small things that you want to make sure that you do. The dashboard itself has some good information, but it's also related to you as a user. So if one thing that you may notice when you first come in, there may be a couple different pieces of information that just have zeros in them, which is basically meaning it doesn't have everything that it needs. But one of the things that you're going to want to do, just to make sure that you've got them set up, is go under your settings section of Realvolve. Down in the lower section on the left-hand side, there is this users and permissions. On users and permissions, this will show you everybody that is a user of your system, obviously. And one thing that we've added recently is this linked contact. Now, realize that what we've done is, obviously, you've got users of the software, and each user has their own login. And you're logging in by whatever login that you've got in the system. But what it also needs is it needs to know the link to a contact record in your database. So it should have a name already listed here. It should be your name. We did go through, and if there was no name in your database with your own name on there or a user's name, we did go ahead and add them in most cases. But the potential problem that could be there is that you might have multiple records in your database, contact records, that have your name in there. I've seen a lot of users that we've imported data, we've brought it in from different sources, and there's multiple records. So one thing that you're going to want to make sure that you do is make sure that, A, you consolidate your contact records so that you have the right amount of contacts in there. If you have yourself in there multiple times, make sure that you've got the correct linked contact in here. And the purpose of this is so that whenever you go into your properties, whatever the properties, the transactions, and whatnot, that on the people section, what we don't do is we don't drag in information for, like, the seller agent. We don't drag the user in this. We drag a contact. So whenever you set up that link between a user and a contact, it now has me, because I'm linked as the seller agent on this particular record. It has me as the contact linked, but it also now knows that because I'm linked as a user on this, this is my record. Okay, so based off of that connection, the sales price, the information on the transaction type, and also the commission information is all tied to me as well. And that's an important distinction, because once you get those links together and you start doing it, it's kind of all automatic once you get those pieces there. But as you're dragging your contact record into the people tab of either the seller agent or the buyer agent or both, and if you're handling both sides, you're going to want to make sure that your information's in there both ways. It ties that record together with your user record and applies the volume information that you're going to get. So if you're the selling agent, you're going to get the sales price for that, and if you're also the buyer's agent, you're going to get the volume for that as well. So I hope that makes sense. Same thing for the commission. So that's all tied together to that user. So whenever you go back and you look at your volume information, and I'm going to cover each one of these, it will bring over those records that have you tied in as the contact, which has that same link as the user. Every one of these, actually probably not everyone, but most of these are all tied to you as a user. Each user that logs in can have a different dashboard, a different set of controls in here. Right now we only have 6 controls. We're working on additional widgets. I call each one of these a widget. And the widget itself, in most cases, pertains to information about you as an individual user. Now, as we add more widgets, there's certain ones that are more private type information, we do have some security measures that will be in place. They're not in there right now, but we will get there fairly soon. Those, some of these items, like your year-to-date commission and stuff like that, you're only going to see that if it's you logged in. So if you've got an assistant, they're logging in, it's not their information, so they won't see it. So understand that. Now, I do also recognize that there are some people that want their assistant to be able to see that information because that's what they do. We'll be addressing that in the settings fairly soon as well, so that you can tie them in. Right now, it's just showing your own information. So let's kind of go through each widget one by one. The first one really is the year-to-date widget, and it's just showing you your year-to-date volume, everything from right now January 1st to December 31st, and whatever is closed. So in your transactional information, if it's set for pending, if it's set for clear to close, stuff like that, your year-to-date won't represent that. This is only for those items that are actually closed. Same thing for the commission. We may be addressing that as a setup as well, so that if you want to include certain things, you can, but that's what it is right now. Average sales price, we take the number of transactions that you've got and take the total volume of those transactions, do the division just to give you your average sales price, and we take that same number of transactions, divide it by your commissions to give you your average commission piece. So some standard information there. These widgets, for this particular one, as you click on a given box, it does dig down deeper. This does then break it up and shows you how much of your volume was dealing with the seller side and which was the buyer side. And if you just click on it again, it goes back. Same type of thing for the year-to-date commission. How much came from seller side and buyer side, that's there. The average sales price does the same thing. Kind of, it's not as useful. I've got some additional changes we're going to go for that one. And then the average commission is broken up that way as well. So just recognize that particular control is really more of your volume, your commission information, and again, that's tied to that user record being tied to a contact record. So making sure that's there. The next widget that we've got is the contact source. Where did my names come from? In this case, as you move your mouse over the top of each one, it will show you kind of where that information came from. So in this case, 10 of my contacts that I've got selected came from my network, 5 of them from referrals. This is all just sample data, so it's not real stuff, but 5 came from the web, and then it shows you your percentages as well. These do, if you have a problem seeing a particular number or you want it adjusted some way, you can certainly adjust it, move it around, breaking out an open piece. One of the features that we don't have in here yet, but will be available at some point soon, is the ability to print these out so that you can come in and see this on a printed format. That will happen in the next a few weeks to a month or so. But that's pretty much it. The contact source, just so that you see the relevance on this, that is, if you go into your settings and we go to the contact source types, that's where these come from. So you can see the information that you've got there, and those are all tied individually. Each contact in your database can be applied to a particular contact source. If you go under the contact themselves, go to the contact tab, and down here under the source type is network, and that's where that comes from. So this particular contact, Jim Smith or Jim Scott, came from the network location. So it goes through and it just shows you a list of where all your names are coming from. The next widget that we've got is the sales volume year to date, and this one, similar to this piece, it just kind of breaks it down by month, January through December, what each month's year volume is, and then that's on the greenish tint bar graph. And then the information on the line graph is your previous year's information. So it just kind of gives you a list. And again, I don't have as much sample data in here as I probably should to show this, but as you go through this, if you've got your previous year's information in there, it will show then that information as a chart to see where you are in relation to your previous year. You do have the ability to go in here and select previous years as well. If you've got any information in there, it'll break that out and show you where that's at. Hoping that makes sense. And then our pipeline, volume pipeline. This is one we wanted to show it in a little bit different format. So it's really breaking it down by the different statuses of your contract. So if you go into your contract in the upper, let me just go to one of them here real quick. In the upper left-hand corner, we have the different status types: pending, canceled, closed, stuff like that. So the items that are closed, contingency, or pending, or clear to close, are all items that will show up on this volume pipeline. So it shows you what your potential is. Now, actually, potential is different. Potential is showing you how many active listings you've got and the accumulated total of their current list price. So I have the potential of 4.4 million in my listing side. So if I went into my listings, added up all the sales price that I have in there, that's going to be the potential. That's what potentially you could get as far as your pipeline. The pending, obviously, are those items in your transactions that are set to pending, and then there would be clear to close, and then also the closed. If you have something closing today, the current date, it will break that out and show you that that is an individual item as well. So that just shows you kind of where your numbers are, and you can close each one of these up to get a different view. That shows kind of a funnel of that. Likewise, if you click on this View Commission Pipeline, it does the same thing, but it shows you your commission amounts. So potentially, based off of your average commissions or whatever commission amount you put in there, if you put in that you've got a list price of $100,000 and the commission is 3% for sell side, 3% for list side, it does a 3% potential for you, just to show you kind of where that could potentially come from. Likewise, for your pendings and your closed, what your volumes and stuff are on those. So kind of gives you some information broken down by their statuses. Now, I put these two last. One thing that I do want to share with you. Now, again, we've only got 6 of them right now. We will be allowing you to add additional widgets. Right now, there's no more to show. But if you remove any of these, then you can put them back on. In the upper right-hand corner, we do have the ability for you to adjust what these are. If you move this into the unlock position, you can move them around. You can delete them if you don't want to see certain ones. You can remove them from the view. If you just want one row of widgets, you can certainly do that. And then going back to the add, now that I've opened that one up, I can add the contact source back in, and then it puts it in there. So just recognize that those are there for you to pick and play with. Now, oh, and once you lock it back, it does go ahead and save that dashboard for you. Okay,
Mark,
so now,
Mark, a quick question before you get to these next two sessions. How often is the data updated?
Okay, right now, it's twice a day. Once in the morning, early in the morning, once in the afternoon. I've been discussing that with the team, and we're looking at, because of the amount of number crunching and stuff that it does, we don't want to slow the system down. We're looking at a couple different options for having that do it more often. So, but right now it does do it twice a day. For your, one of the things that we were talking about as far as the transactions and the properties, as you add a new property, have it updated at that point so that it would go through that process, or if you delete a transaction or property, that it update at that point. That's not in there now, but that's one of the directions we're looking at doing. The amount of time that it takes to update the entire database of everybody isn't that great, but as you add on millions of records, it does add a little bit of time. So we're just cognitive of speed, wanting to make sure that we don't bog everybody down on things. But like the volume, it's actually done instantaneous. As you add more things, it actually does it immediately. Likewise for the contact source, it's this piece here and possibly this one. There's a couple of them that are done just twice a day. That help? Does that explain it?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so now I want to go to, in order to actually talk about these two, I want to go back to a contact for a second. In previous versions, we had a map of the address of this person, which was fine, for purposes of having there, but technically you could get to that same map under the contact side. So it was kind of a wasted space. So we really wanted to isolate those things that are important about this contact. And something that we've added, and it was part of my discussion that we talked about this weekend at the Rev conference. Rev stands for Real Estate Vision. It's by Patrick Lilly, just giving some background. For those, several people asked about it and wanted to make sure you guys knew about it, because it was an awesome conference. But what we did is I did a session, a 30-minute session, on what I call propinquity scoring. And propinquity, like I said, talks about nearness or closeness in relationships. So what we've done in Realvolve is we know that as people use databases, there's lots of databases out there. They put data in, and whatever they put in is what they get back. If they put in a name and address, you get names and addresses back. You put in phone numbers, you get phone numbers back. And that's great. I mean, if you don't want to necessarily store all that stuff in your brain and forget it and stuff, so you have to have some place for holding that. But in most databases, that's where it stops. It's a holding facility for your information. And for a long time we've thought about this as an issue. Is like, there's a lot of data, there's a lot of information about your contact that you're not really recognizing, you're not utilizing. And we started thinking about relationships and how relationships are formed, how you look at those relationships in your database. Now, most people will have some kind of, if I was to look in your database today and try to determine somebody's relationship with you, could I do it? Could I tell how close of a relationship do I have with a particular person? So if we look at Jim Scott right here, I mean, I've got some basic information. I've got his ABCs. I mean, he's an important person to me. I've got information on addresses and phone numbers and email type stuff. He's done some transactions with me, some properties and stuff. I've got some showings and stuff. But that's all good information, but there's really deeper information than that. How close do I have of a relationship with him? And we can gather that using what some people would call big data. I really prefer calling it intelligent data. There's information in there like what I might classify as Google data. If I was to Google Jim Scott here, I might be able to find out where he works or the address of where he works, some basic information about him. Now, that doesn't mean I've got any kind of relationship with him if I have that information, but it means I've got some information on him. There's more personal information that I might have on him, like his home address, his home phone number, his home cell phone, his kids' names, things like that. And that would be more like information that you might find if you were to go and be a friend with him on Facebook. You've got some friendship there. It's more than just Googling him. But if his privacy settings are right, he doesn't necessarily give all of his information. But once you become a friend, then you're getting more information. And there's a different level of relationship there. Obviously, if it's just Google information, you don't have any kind of relationship. Where if you're a friend, you've got some relationship. And then there's more private information as far as things that only you and him would know about each other. And as you collect this type of information, like how many years have you known each other? More details on birthdays and information like that. Or if we dig into your calendar and we say, well, I've gone to lunch with this person. I've had dinners with them. I've gone on trips with them. This is data that helps you build that relationship. And what we do is we break it down into different categories of bonding and time and details you've got collected on them, the category that you've selected, and it builds, and there's actually more elements in that. This really isn't showing all the elements on this particular record, but it starts building a numerical value for that propinquity score or that relationship score. And just imagine that if you start looking at your data and looking at that score and saying, wow, I've got two people in my database that I consider equally, that their friendship is equal to me, okay? But if I look at both of their records, I might see one score is much higher than another score. And it could be that I go out to eat dinner more with one, I go out to, I've gone golfing with somebody, or I've played poker with somebody that I haven't done, and I've got that in my calendar that I haven't done with the other person. My friendship with them, relationship with them, I might feel subjectively that they're equal. But if you actually look at it in more an objective manner, an objective score, you'll see that they're much different. And then that gives you some ability to say, hey, I really need to do more with this other person that I feel is, I've got good friendship with, I've got a good relationship with, but their score is much lower than somebody else that I'm building this. So the whole idea of the propinquity score is to give you an objective view of your relationship with people. Now, expand that out to your entire database. Look at that more in a much broader view, based off of the number of contacts that you have active in your database.
Mark, can I add something to this conversation?
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm going to switch screens just momentarily so I can show a graphic that will help understand us. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay. So, why we're doing this, everyone, is to, really help you see what it takes to build an actual business, and what we wanted to look at, in addition to providing all the tools that Realvolve does, is really explore the science of how relationships work. So everyone that you've ever met in your life, and you can go back to being a child and with people on your soccer team. When you have more positive interactions with people, you tend to form a relationship. Everyone in your life goes through a series of steps: aware, know, like, and trust. And the more positive interactions you have with someone, the more you are apt to build an actual relationship. And it's those collection of relationships of a large group of people that like and trust you, that's where businesses are built. And this not only works with people, it is the same thing for food, with music. You could be driving in your car, hear a song on the radio, you may not like it the first time you hear it, but if you have a couple more exposures to it, pretty soon you're singing along in the car. So it's very important to understand to how to move people over, and for us to be able to provide the tools to help you recognize this. And this is really, it's fundamentally transformative for the industry and for your business once you grasp this. Because what happens with the overwhelming majority of agents in the marketplace, everyone is stuck in the aware know of people, whether it's lead capturing, knocking on doors, doing open houses, and we all have to do those things. But if we don't have a plan to move those relationships forward, to a know, like, and trust, we'll forever be stuck on that hamster wheel of meeting new people and chasing new business. So as we meet new people in our community, it's just important to think big picture. How do we move people along into this collection of like and trust? And once they're in trust, they don't automatically stay there. So you want to be able to find these people and continue these positive interactions. So I just wanted to make that note, and I'm going to switch back to you here, Mark. Give me one moment.
That's awesome. Yeah, and one of the things that you want to make sure, like is where you do business typically. They go through that aware and know, and then once they like you, they do business with you. It's at that point where you've continued to build your business, your relationship with them, that they do move to that trust section, and that's where the magic happens, because that's where they do the repeat business, but they also start doing more of the referral. That trust is what's so important, and your business as a whole will skyrocket based off of having more people in that trust section as you go along.
So recognizing what we've built here, this is really novel in the industry. And has the potential to be transformative. Never before has there been a tool that will measure the quality of your relationships. Oftentimes everyone we meet, every internet lead, we dump into the same place, and we have this collection of names, phone numbers, and email addresses, but without understanding that data and the depth of the relationship, it's easy to become frustrated and just chase new people. If we talk to any top producing agent all across the planet, it is that collection of deep relationships that is the foundation of their business.
Right. Now, one thing that's going to be happening soon, and it's part of that data collection that we're doing, is not only are we checking calendars and all that kind of stuff to get that score to make it more intelligent. For those that have not gone in there, and for your people, there is a field for stage. Where do you feel that they're at? The aware, the know, the like, or the trust. If you don't have that filled in for particular people, the system will fill it in fairly soon for us based off of the scores. If it's an extremely low score, it'll be in the aware. If it's above that minimal, it'll be in the know. And then as you move into certain things, the like would be typically people that have done business with you, and then the trust will be those people that have done multiple transactions with you, or that have referred you multiple people. So these will be being filled in fairly soon if you don't have them filled in. But they can change as you go along, so be aware of that. Likewise, the suspect, prospect, lead, client, past client, if you're active with a client, this should be getting set soon to active. So if you've got an active listing with them, or if you've got an active transaction with them where they are the either the buyer or the seller, then it should assign them as client. If you've done any closed, if you've got any closed transactions or any listings that have been withdrawn or different statuses other than active, pending, or pre-listing, then it'll be set to past client. So some of those items will be adjusting for you automatically. You can override them if you feel like they need to be overwritten. You can certainly do that. So just want to let you know that. That's important because of one of the controls that's on the dashboard as well. So, which is this cross-section. I'll get to that in a second, but just realize that aware, know, like, trust compared to the contact type is important. So if we look at all of those scores, the relationship score in your entire database, we can tell a couple things from that. We can tell, is your database full of a lot of leads that came in from a lead generation website that you really have little information on? You may not have much relationship with at all. Is it full of those types of records? Or does it have, at the far extreme, would be everybody in your database, you've built relationships with them over time. You've got a strong base of extremely high ranked contact relationship scores, or is there somewhere in between? So what we do is we take that database and we assign an R factor, a relationship factor. And based off of that relationship factor on how many of contacts you have in a given area, will determine, for the most part, the quality of your database. And based off of that quality of that database, based off of the number of contacts you have in that database, we can give you, with reasonable accuracy, it's not a for sure type thing. I mean, obviously, if you don't do any work at all, it won't come true at all. But you have the propensity, the ability to do a certain number of transactions. Could it be higher? Absolutely. Could it be lower? Absolutely. But it's going to give you some recognition of, this is my value of my database. This is a fairly reasonable value of my database. Now, what does that give you? Well, if you look at your past transactions to give your average commission, we can then predict what kind of revenue you should be able to get off of that. The other thing that this gives you is the ability to think ahead and say, hey, I'm thinking about retiring sometime soon. I might want to sell my entire database. Would somebody find value in your database? Absolutely, if it's not full of junk. If it's got a high R factor and you can see where that information comes from, people buy businesses based off of the perceived value, the value that is there. And it's really hard to come up with that value at times if you don't have some numbers to show that, and that's where these numbers can help you. So a couple different things that's of value there. Anything to add there, Dave?
No, that's fantastic. I'm glad that you made that point. There's really has never been a repository that gathers this information year to year and shows what that database is worth. It's so important and fundamental to building an actual business. So thank you for making that point.
Right. Okay, so then each one of these, we will be digging deeper and explaining more about how the numbers come in and what they do, and you'll be able to click on those. Right now, that doesn't do it because it's still gathering intelligence. We're still in the process of evaluating numbers and doing stuff, comparing it to previous numbers, and making sure that we're accurate on what we're doing. So hang tight on some of these things. May not be being filled in for you yet. Rest assured they will fairly soon.
How high does the R factor go? What is that? What is the context of?
Right now we're doing a scale of 1 to 10.
Okay.
Depending on what we find with our data, we may scale that to a 100-point scale and then break it down into smaller amounts. So you can get like a 6.5, different factors that actually gives you more of a percentage. But it is kind of that way now. It's just it's their whole numbers at this point. So it's still gathering that intelligence to really give us the best numbers that we feel are accurate. Our challenge is, obviously, we want to make sure that the numbers are accurate. So we didn't want to pinpoint it too much and be totally way off. So right now it's more of a general number, and then at some point it may break out into more specific as we go along. Because Realvolve is so new, and because we don't have a lot of historical data in Realvolve, that number crunching is taking time. Now, because I've got background history on like 25 years of history on users in a different database, we have some of that information available, and we're utilizing some of that in order to help guide that number. But we want to make sure it's more accurate, so we're looking at the Realvolve data right now. Okay, so the last widget that we've got here is our contact cross-section. Now, like I said, this is dealing with that aware, know, like, and trust, comparing it to our suspect, prospect, lead, client, past client. And what this does is this shows you a number of contacts that you've got in your different segments, cross-sections, that need to be contacted in some form or fashion. So if I go into a certain person, past client trust, and I do go to Jim Scott, for instance, I get some basic information about him. I get the home phone and stuff like that. I can call them. I can send them. I can click on Jim Scott right here and get the detailed record. I can add a note to them. There'll be a couple more additional buttons that's on here which allows you to update some information in the database that's being worked on right now. But what this does is it says, hey, you've not contacted Jim in over 90 days. You really need to give him a call. Now, it's not telling me that just because I want to contact everybody every 90 days, But because of my relationship, because of where I'm at, there's extenuating circumstances that saying, hey, you need to do this. So we're actually giving you information on what you should be doing based off of good business practices and more in-depth stuff. So as we go along, this will get more detailed as well. I've got like 60 or so different types of things that will help guide you through that process. So as you go through your different people, it will go through there. Once I make that contact, then Jim Scott will be being removed from this list so that I then know who my next person is. So I can go through at any point and say, hey, you know, I've got some suspects here. They're right on the verge, potentially, of moving from suspect to prospect, or they might be on the verge of moving from aware to know, and I need to contact them based off of their score, not based off of other things. So then I can contact them. If I've contacted them recently, then it would potentially move them out of that list. It says, hey, you've already contacted them. There's no need in doing it here. But based off of several different conditions, that's going to allow you to have more detailed information on who you need to be calling and why. Does that make sense, Dave?
It does. Thank you.
Okay. So again, these two boxes in particularly are still being number crunched. So hang tight on both of those. For the rest of the dashboard stuff, it's as it was before. As far as the notes, being able to see that, being able to see activities, that's all there. That's not changing. We will be adding additional widgets. Some of the widgets, like some lead generation, where are my leads coming from? That's really kind of what the contact source does, but breaking it down by lead and knowing some numbers of comparing my uptake as far as conversion rate and things like that. So they're going to be getting in more detail there. Comparing more listing stuff. There's several widgets we have planned and are currently being worked on. But we want to hear from you guys. While all this is nice and dandy, handy-dandy, is it going to be things that, you know, we can come up with lots of different number crunching type things, but is it something that you guys would want to actually know? So I'm calling out to all of our users. I want you guys to be actively helping us deal with the widget part of it anyway, and tell us what you're wanting. What, based off of the data that you've got in there, and based off of maybe other software that you have used that does give you other graphical, other data compilation of some sort, what would you like to know? What types of information would you want to know? And email that to me, mark@realvolve.com. And a lot of our drive for the next few weeks is just going to be developing and working on getting information to you guys. Another part of this, which most of our users are independent agents. They've got, you know, their own database and stuff like that. We are starting to accumulate those users that have multiple agents, and they are the broker. And we are working on broker widgets as well, breaking out and seeing, hey, you know, are my users, being the agents, are they making their phone calls? Are they completing their tasks? Are they making those connections that they need to be making? And not necessarily to be a, you know, a big brother type thing, but to say, hey, how can I help you? It looks like, you know, your calendar's filling up, you've got a lot of things going on, and you're getting behind on things. Are there things that I, as the broker, can help you with? And being able to accumulate that type of information. So if there's any brokers out there that are listening to this, definitely that's the type of information I want to know as well. What is it that you would like to know about your agents that would help them grow in their business? That's what we're all about, is we want to make sure that everybody grows in their business. And as you use the system, as you fill in the information, it's important to gather that information.
Yep, and just email us feedback@revolve.com if you have specific questions. But we do have some questions online now, Mark, and if we can go through these because we are running close to running out of time here.
Absolutely. Okay. Boy, there's a bunch of money. Okay. How does it track your activity, calls, emails, follow-up, stuff like that? Okay, that kind of goes along with this piece. It's gathering more information, and it will tell you that. There will be another widget that is more for summarizing the number of phone calls you have and stuff, but right now you can still do that simply by going to your activities and saying, well, I want to know all the calls that I need to make. So, click on call here on your filter, and it will list every phone call that you need to make. Or if I want to see all the emails I need to send, you can certainly do that. We've had that on there. It's not a widget right yet because these we felt were a little bit more important because we did have that ability to break those up by the different calls and stuff that you've got. Okay, if you have multiple owners whose dashboard would the statistics show on? Okay, it really breaks down to who is the selling or the buying agent. One of those, that information is determined based off of that. So I did talk with some of the agents this weekend at the conference, and they were talking about, well, I've got my buyer's agent. The volume is still belonging to me. Even though it's buyer's agent, we're going to address that so that that volume still is you, but also assigned to the buyer's agent. So hang tight on that one. We're addressing that one as we speak. There was one question on the details by Zach Williams. Zach, we are in the process. The question is on the contacts. He's finding it a little bit cumbersome going to a contact and then updating the information in the contact. Well, we are aware of that. We're in the process of rearranging this some. One of the things that I've been discussing with our team about is just like on the dashboard, I allow you to drag and drop those boxes in different locations. The ability to put these items in different boxes so that you can drag and drop them into an area that you decide. That's one thing that would definitely help so that you guys can, it's really not necessarily customized, but it is. I mean, you'll be able to designate the areas that's most important to you to be up at the top. So I think that will address it once we get there.
And this follow-up question about auto-updating, last call types, et cetera, those are some of the things that we will be moving to, but it is important to record every time you do have an interaction with someone, even if it is something as simple as you're running into someone at the farmer's market and you get a little bit more information from them. Those moments matter, and you should record that as often as you can.
Yeah. Two things will be coming. Like I said, on the contact itself, there will be some buttons down here, I believe is where we're planning on putting them, that will allow you to quickly update the last call, the last personal visit, the last personal note with the current date on there. So if you just click on it, it'll assign that date to that contact for you. Likewise, on certain activities in your workflow, in the action section, we'll be assigning, if it's a call, then if you've got it marked to update that call. There's certain times when you make a call to somebody that's really not, I mean, it's a call, yes, but it's not a reconnect type call, or it's not a, you want to spend time building relationship call. It's more information call, and having that in there as the date you may not want. So that's why it doesn't necessarily automatically update that, but we're going to give you that ability to update that.
Now, Lisa and Steve have a similar question about the pipeline as it relates to buyers, because right now we're measuring the pipeline with active listings. What about the buy-in side?
We've got to address that in a way based off of the contact. I mean, it will pull the transactional buyer, I mean, buyers that you currently have in transactions, but it's not currently dealing with buyers that you've got that you're currently actively dealing with. And that's another one that was asked this weekend as well, and I'm in kind of in a thought mode on that. If you guys want to give me your thoughts on that, I would love to hear them to make sure that that works for you. Because you know, I deal with a lot of agents. I can honestly say I don't deal with as many buyers agents per se. So a lot of my knowledge comes from the listing side more. So if you guys are heavy into that and you want to make sure that that's set up the way makes the most sense, send me an email on that, or we can arrange a time to really talk through that process, because that is important to me. I want to make sure it's set up for you. I think that the potential client by Steve, that is the same type of thing. The can buyer client potential be added? And I think that we can certainly do that. We'll have to do some looking in on that. Are you left clicking and dragging when you move the pieces around? Oh, on this, whenever you unlock it, I'm just doing a single click on the left mouse button and dragging it to the new location. And then once I click on the lock button, then it stores it. Okay. I would like to copy those slides, frequent, positive interactions built, and build relationships if possible. Okay. The Dave, the slide that you showed, I think is what she's talking about.
Yes, that's posted in our Facebook group now.
It's in the Facebook group, Lisa.
Yes.
So there you go on that. Mike, might be a good idea to allow only selected groups of contacts to be included. Yeah, we're analyzing that as well. The thing we were thinking on that is, you know, you still got relationships with your vendors, your lenders, other things, so we don't necessarily want to totally exclude them, but I think grouping them and then showing that chart based off of certain tags is noteworthy. So that's a great idea, and I think we'll be working with that. It may be a totally different control. As we build these, we may have certain ones that have more details than others, but very similar, and you can pick and choose the one that most represents what you want the information to show. How will you surface this awesome data for action? Okay, well, I kind of showed that in this section, I think is what you're asking about, Kendall. If not, we can talk about that. I mean, surfacing the information is what we're all about trying to find the data that we're gathering from these people, the data that we're gathering. I mean, just think about this. You know, as you send you know, you're putting stuff in your calendar and it's building that relationship score. That's one thing. Think about sentiment analysis, mood analysis on your emails. If I send an email to somebody and I cuss them out, not that I would do that, but you know, it's a negative email. My relationship score is going to plummet. If I send something that's much more lifting, that's very positive email, my relationship score goes up. And talking about lots of different things that's going to surface based off of lots of different data, and we've got to figure out a good way to analyze, not necessarily analyze, but show that analyzed information in some manner that goes along there. One of the things that will be happening as well, as we collect this, relationship scores are going to constantly go up and go down, right? One of the widgets will be a historical trend graph. So it'll show you which direction is my relationship going. Is it going up? Is it stagnant right now, or is it going down? You know, is it going in a downward projection? And based off of that information, then I can dive deeper and say, hey, you know, I see somebody, they're really going down. I need to contact them. Not because it's every 90 days, not because, you know, I need to send them a personal note or something like that. It's because things are happening. Potentially, you know, the email analysis piece of it is going to go on. Now, I think next week we'll, and I'm going to be working on a video for this, but we'll probably be talking about email next week. And I know a lot of you have been asking about the sending of the emails and how that information looks whenever it's being sent. We'll be addressing that with the SMTP stuff, allowing you to set your own, but be aware that by doing that, you're going to be losing some of that capability for doing some of the email analytics. So I'll let you guys determine yourself which way you really want to go, but there are some issues with doing what you're trying to do and still stay within a spam aware environment that we're trying to help you stay out of spam. So there's some things that we're doing to help prevent spam-related issues. And if we give you your own SMTP, we can't control that.
Kendall Young is on the line. She has a comment on that.
Sure. Well, one of the things that I observe as you're going through this data, and I think it's pretty darn brilliant, but then I'm a big fan. What I think needs to be emphasized as we consider all of the work that is necessary to input the data is to really focus on how much more we're getting out of each data point, how much more effective each second we spend in working on Realvolve will be to our ability to create more business, create better relationships, and ultimately create a better life than the same second that we would spend in a competing CRM that might not give us as much usefulness or as much action points in that database. So there's a lot here. There's a lot that we can do to contribute to our database, but there's exponentially more that we will get from Realvolve than we would somewhere else.
Absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up. What we are trying to do is use the data that you're already putting in. Mm-hmm. You know, we don't really want you to do a whole lot of extra work necessarily, but realize that whatever extra work you do put in, it's being used. It's being, you know, we're taking note of that. And if you really start doing that, putting in, you know, your appointments and stuff with your people and tying them to those people, that makes that connection. If I just say, you know, I'm going to lunch, I can't tell who I'm building that relationship with.
Well, frankly, I mean, it's been my experience with databases is that, you know, you start out with a database and you start putting a bunch of information in and you feed it, and what you get out of it isn't that much. And so you slowly stop feeding it the data that you need. In this particular case, we're going to feed in the data that you've put in there, and because we're going to get so much more out of it, it's going to encourage, incentivize us to continue feeding it the data that is really kind of basic. Put your appointment in, right? You know, make the notes after you call. I don't know about the rest of you. I've been guilty of this over the last couple of decades. I'll start making comments, you know, recording my conversations on a client, but slowly I'm going to start forgetting to put in the notes after I finish the phone call. In this particular case, I think we're going to do a lot more of that because you're analyzing the data and giving us actionable points to make money off of.
Right. And something that we're not doing yet, but it will be part of it, is not only will we be doing the sentiment analysis on the emails, but also on the notes. So we can tell whether it's a positive note or a negative note as well.
Right. Mr. Gary Hall had a question about if the R factor, making a point that it should not include title, mortgage, and other industry colleagues.
Right. Hey, Gary, on that, I don't totally disagree, but at the same time, those vendors that you're doing stuff with are just as likely to send you referrals, if not more in some cases, if you've got the right relationship with. So we're trying to figure out the best way to weed out those people that should not necessarily be in that overall scope. And I agree with you, there are limiting factors on what should be in there, because your score does depend on numbers of people, but it also depends on the types of people. And I mean, if you're talking about, say for instance, a vendor like a painter, you're sending lots of referrals to your painter. You would expect, I mean, the law of what's that law, guys?
Reciprocity.
Reciprocity, thank you. The law of reciprocity would guide that, they would refer people back to you just as much. So having a good relationship with a person and being able to say, hey, now how do you do your business? As a painter, do you go in there and say, Mr. Homeowner, are you wanting me to paint your house because you're going to stay in it longer, or are you preparing it for sale, for whatever reason? And if they are preparing it for sale, the painter says, hey, I've got a great realtor. Do you currently have a realtor? And if not, then let me call this person for you. And that's, that relationship, because he's in front of those people that potentially could be precursors to selling a home, is potentially a higher value person to you than somebody that maybe you've done business with, 7 to 9 years ago. Those people are still potentially going to buy another house from you, but maybe they've not given you any referrals, where the person that is a vendor potentially is going to give you more referrals. Does that make sense, Kendall?
Yeah, totally.
Okay. We're really running out of time. For those that want to go, we'll keep recording this, and I'll just keep going down this.
Yeah, let's keep going, because we have quite a few questions left.
I want to make sure that they realize I'll keep this going until we go through them all. Okay, can you define the difference between suspect and prospect? Okay, suspect typically means that person that they have come onto your website, they've filled out maybe their name and address or email address. You don't really know that much about them, and you've not necessarily sent them anything to know what they're looking for. The prospect is somebody that you've not only received information from, but you've sent out some pertinent information that they potentially want or need about their needs. They may be looking for a home in a certain area. If they just give you their name and email address, you don't necessarily know anything about them. But if they have given you more information about where they want to live or different stuff like that, that is more of a prospect than a suspect. Now, if they start interacting with you back and forth, and you're now in more of a conversation mode, sending emails back and forth, then they go from prospect to lead. In my mind, they are more engaged with you. Their engagement level is much higher. That relationship score is much higher than prospect.
Got it. Great. Thank you. I have unmuted Gary Wise. He has a quick question, Mark. Go ahead, Gary.
Actually, it's Jennifer Goodman on behalf of Gary Wise.
Oh, hi, Jennifer.
Hi, how are you? Guys, I'm just wondering, is there, using Evernote quite a bit and having the ability to look up everything, simply, is there something that we can be using within the system that will allow us to have like a keyword search or an attachment to specific lenders, lawyers, etc.? And you may want to mute me because I'm at the airport, sorry.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Yeah, with the Evernote, I mean, one thing that happens whenever you synchronize with Evernote is it does synchronize the notes. So if you do a search up in this upper search field, up in this search for anything field, it does search your notes. So it should be pulling back. If there's a keyword of some sort that's in those notes, it should be pulling it in. Just off, I mean, that's off the top of my head. As far as lenders and stuff like that, I think probably we need to kind of dig deeper on that need. I'm not totally sure I totally understood the question, but I think the keyword search up here, if anything, right now it searches too much. We've got some situations where if you search your own name and you're the record owner, or you've got lots of notes in there, everybody seems to show up, and that's counterproductive.
Yeah, that's some fine tuning that we need to put in place, and Evernote could be a part of that. We do need to do some more surveys on how many of our subscribers are actually using that service as well. Rochelle has an additional follow-up question to her earlier one. The difference between referral and source type.
Well, referral is a particular person. So if you've got a contact in your database that referred another person, you want to make sure that you make that link, because that is another relationship point. If Jim Scott refers somebody to me, or multiple people to me, that means his score goes up. So if I go to somebody in the database, Jim Smith, for instance, and I go to the referred by piece here, and I put in Jim Scott, and then definitely be sure that you put in a date. That way you can determine what year or whatever that person gave you that referral. Make sure that that's in there. But based off of that information, we're tying contact records together. So I can now, if I wanted to, I could come up here because of that one particular thing. I can come over here to the referred by and say, I want to see everybody that was referred by Jim Scott. And Jim Smith is the only one in there. That's because I just now tied them together. But you could see the entire list of everybody that Jim Scott referred. At some point, we don't have it in there right now, but we'll actually drive that down as a referral tree, so you could see exactly how that family of relationship happens. But that's just a quick way of gathering that information. The contact source, you could still put the contact source as a sphere of influence if you wanted to, or because that's really kind of where it is. I mean, it was a sphere of influence, which is Jim Scott is part of my sphere potential. That's not necessarily the actual source person. So this just really ties it down deeper.
Great, thank you.
Are there plans for a widget to search contact records and recommend daily call lists? Yeah, that's on its way. I mean, that's part of some of the prospecting piece that's in there, but definitely we'll work on some additional pieces like that.
Okay. The next one is from Lisa. Is there a contact field to indicate the contact is a vendor or a transaction coordinator?
Yeah, a vendor or transaction coordinator. One thing that's not on here yet, and we've got it in our list, there is an entire list of business types. I'm going to call it that way. So if you want to pull up, say, everybody that's a lender, everybody that's a painter, that type of stuff, so that you can break those down. You can use a tag right now for that. Most people are using tags for that. The problem is different people have different tags for different things, and we want to have a common piece so that whenever we're doing this dashboard, we can guide it as far as an actual list. We don't want to use tags that aren't relevant, to say it that way, I guess. So,
I think that somewhat answers Michael's question, which brings us to the final. Some of them I've been answering offline, Mark. If you scroll to the last one from Richard.
Richard Payne, how do I get people into the dashboard view of the cross-section again? Okay, so it will be very soon. It will be calculated for you. So like Jim Smith here, I don't have much data on Jim. So I've got a name, I've got an address in the sample data. But that's it. So it by default would probably more line up with, as far as the stage, would probably be in the aware section. If you want to, you can go ahead and override that choice and put in a value in stage, and also in the contact status, whether they're a suspect, prospect, lead. If you know they are a lead, you've been doing stuff back and forth, but the data hasn't been accumulated to know those numbers quite right yet, it will override that information. So now this would put this person, Jim Smith, into the aware and lead section, and then start picking up from that point. So as because the score is so low, it will probably immediately say, hey, you need to call this person because you need more information, that they're falling behind, therefore you probably need to contact them. Because as a lead, they're really not in the score section of a normal lead.
Great. Thank you. And a final question from Emily Thomas.
I'm an assistant, and to be clear, do I need to log in under the agent I work for instead of my own to work with for the data to be accurate? Okay, so Emily, we're going to address this by allowing the account holder to go into your record your users and permissions section and associate you to her, so that if you log in as you, certain things would be accessible to you. Right now, because of it being tied to that user record, it is under her information. So you will need to log into her to actually see the accurate information. But once we get that tie together, then it will address it more. It'll show it more accurately for you. It really comes down to, each user of our system is different. I mean, we've got some users that are agents and some that are assistants, some that are transaction coordinators, and each one of them need to have different views of data. Right now, we were isolating it to just the individual users, and then we're going to be allowing you guys to group certain people to each of the tools, to whichever one has the appropriate rights to. So for a given widget, she may want to go into your user account and permissions section and say, yeah, give Emily that record information about me. And it's really just a security issue at this point, more than anything.
Great. Okay, I think that wraps up everyone. I privately answered some questions in the chat. If you have any further questions, just email them to Mark or I direct, just in case we missed anyone. But wonderful job, Mark. Thank you very much, everybody, and we'll talk with you soon.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate you.
Bye-bye.